Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through the front door of a 1950s American home. The kind with a screen door that slaps softly behind you and a hallway that smells faintly of floor wax, percolated coffee, and something baking 2 rooms away. The afternoon light is coming in low through the Venetian blinds, laying long golden stripes across the linoleum, and somewhere in the house a radio is murmuring to no one in particular. It is an ordinary day. Nobody thought to write any of it down. That is exactly why we're here. Before we settle in, I want to say a real thank you to the viewer who suggested this one. You sent me down a wonderful little rabbit hole, and honestly, the best ideas on this channel almost always come from you. If you enjoy these quiet trips backward in time, it would mean a lot if you liked the video and subscribed. And if you feel like it, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and whether your own childhood home had any of the strange, wonderful things we're about to talk about. No pressure at all. And if you would rather drift off to these stories with your eyes closed, the channel is now on Spotify too, so you can find us there through the link down in the description. So go ahead and get comfortable, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft, steady hum, pull the blanket up, find the cool side of the pillow, and let the day loosen its grip on you. Because I have been wondering about some things lately. What did a Tuesday afternoon actually feel like in 1956, with the ironing done and the children still at school? What did the inside of a hall closet smell like, with its wool coats and rubber galoshes? Why did every home seem to have a small door in the kitchen wall that led to nowhere? What was it like to share a telephone line with the people 3 houses down and to know their ring by heart? And why on earth did the nicest room in the house have plastic on the couch and a rule that nobody could sit there? And just like that, it is 1956. The coffee is already bubbling on the stove, a milk truck is idling somewhere down the block, and the house is waiting for you, full of ordinary marvels that no one at the time thought were marvellous at all. Let's start in the kitchen, at that curious little door set low into the wall beside the back porch. It is barely bigger than a shoebox, hinged on the outside and hinged on the inside, a tiny passage between the world and your home. Every few mornings before you are fully awake, the milkman lifts the outer flap and sets in cold glass bottles beading with condensation, and by the time you shuffle in for breakfast, they are waiting there in the dark like a small, faithful gift. You never think about it. It is simply how milk arrives. But if you crouch down and open the inner door yourself, there is a whole small world in there. The bottles are heavier than you expect. Thick glass gone frosty and slick, the cream risen in a pale plug at the neck of each one. On the coldest mornings that cream has pushed the little cardboard cap up an inch or 2, frozen and proud, and your mother scolds nobody in particular about it while she pries it loose. The chute itself smells of cold metal and old milk and the outdoors, a draught always leaking through, so that in winter you can feel February pressing in through that little door. It is a conversation carried on entirely in glass and pencil, between 2 people who may never once speak face to face. The neighbour 2 doors down has one too, and so does the family across the street, and so it goes up and down the block, a whole quiet economy running through the walls of every house before anyone has brushed their teeth. There is a trust built into it that you never examine. You leave money in an envelope in the chute and it is simply gone in the morning, replaced by what you ordered. Nobody worries, nobody double checks. The door opens to the street, and the street, as far as anyone can tell, means you no harm. You learn its uses beyond milk too. A note left for the paper boy. A key passed to a cousin. Once, a warm pie your mother sent through to the widow next door, though the chute was really too small for it, and the crust suffered for the journey. The chute becomes a kind of secret handshake between the inside of your life and the outside of it, small enough to overlook and large enough to matter. In summer, the milkman comes earlier, racing the heat, and the bottles sweat great beads that pool in the bottom of the chute. In winter, he comes bundled to the eyes, and the milk can freeze solid if nobody fetches it in time, so it becomes a child's job, a small proud duty, to run down first thing and rescue the bottles before they burst. You cradle them against your chest so cold they ache, and carry them to the icebox with the seriousness of someone entrusted with something that matters. And it does matter. That milk is breakfast, is the cream in the coffee, is the reason the morning can properly begin. Your mother has opinions about the milk, of course. She knows which dairy gives the richest cream, and which one waters things down, and she is loyal the way people were loyal to things then, quietly and for life. The bottles wear the dairy's name pressed right into the glass, and when one goes missing she notices, because those bottles go back and forth for years, washed and refilled 100 times over, and there is something almost tender in that. The same bottle returning again and again like a migrating bird. It is hard to picture now, this little door standing open to the street, this cold, sweet cargo left waiting in the dark. Today the milk comes sealed in plastic from a store lit brighter than noon, and no stranger has a standing invitation to leave anything in the wall of your home. Something was gained, surely. But something small was quietly set down and never picked up again too. The idea that your house had a mouth that opened to the neighbourhood, and that what came through it was always, reliably, kindness in a glass bottle. Most of these chutes are sealed over now, plastered flush, painted the colour of the wall, so that families move into these old houses and never know the little door was ever there. But sometimes, tapping along a kitchen wall, someone finds the hollow spot and pries it open, and there it is again, that small cold passage to a morning long gone. It is the kind of quiet that is harder to find now, a house that trusted the street enough to leave a door ajar. So before we move on, let the sound of that gentle clink settle over you. The bottles arriving before the birds, the day beginning with something cold and good waiting patiently in the wall. Step out the back door now, past the clothesline, to the squat brick or wire contraption standing at the edge of the yard. This is the incinerator, and burning your own trash is just what you do. In the cool of the evening you carry out the day's paper, the vegetable peelings, the things that will not be saved, and you set them alight, watching the smoke curl up into a sky that still, somehow, seems endless. Half the neighbourhood is doing the same, and the whole street smells faintly of wood smoke by dusk. Nobody questions it. The idea that the air itself might need protecting has not arrived yet. It is your father's job, mostly, or an older brother's, this small evening ritual with the matches. There is something almost pleasant in it, if you are honest. The way the flames catch the newspaper first and race across the headlines, curling the day's news into black lace. You stand a little back, watching sparks lift and wander upward, and the heat pushes gently against your face on a cool night. The dog keeps its distance. The younger children are told to keep theirs too, though they always creep closer than they should, mesmerised the way people have always been mesmerised by a fire they are allowed to tend. The smell is particular and unforgettable. Burning paper, yes, but underneath it the sweetish tang of orange peels and coffee grounds, the acrid note of something that ought not to have gone in, a bit of rubber or a wax carton flaring green and blue. It drifts through the screen doors of the whole block, mingling from a dozen yards into one shared haze that hangs low over the fences at dusk. To you it is simply the smell of evening, of chores winding down, of supper settling and the long day folding closed. Your mother sorts what burns from what does not, out of long habit. The tin can she rinses and sets aside, the bottles go back to the store or into the chute, but the rest, the peelings and the parings and the wrappings and the endless newspaper, that all goes out to the fire. There is far less of it than a family produces today, and what there is mostly things that were once alive and are content to burn. Plastic has barely arrived. The mountain of packaging that follows a modern grocery trip simply does not exist here. So the burning is a small, manageable thing, a handful of the day gone up in smoke. Neighbours nod at each other over the fences while their fires burn, a companionable sort of chore that keeps everyone out in their yards at the same hour. Someone calls a greeting, someone comments on the weather, or the ball game, or the price of beef. The incinerators become, without anyone planning it, another of the 100 small reasons the people on a street knew one another then, another appointment the whole block kept together without ever quite deciding to. The children learn the fire the way children learn everything, by watching and being warned. You learn how close is too close. You learn the little thrill of being handed the task at last, of being trusted with the matches, of standing where your father stood and feeling briefly older than you are. You learn to poke the embers down with a long stick, to make sure nothing wanders, to wait until the last orange eye winks shut before you go inside. It is a responsibility, and responsibility at that age feels a great deal like being loved. Of course, we know now what nobody knew then, or nobody let themselves know, that all those fires up and down all those streets in every town in the country were sending something up into that endless seeming sky that the sky could not simply swallow. That the wood smoke of evening carried more than nostalgia. In time the rules would come, the ordinances and the fines, the trucks that hauled everything away to somewhere you never had to think about, and the little incinerators would rust quietly at the edges of yards until someone finally carted them off. The evening ritual would end, and the block would lose one more reason to stand out in its yards at dusk. There is no mourning the cleaner air, of course. That was the right trade, plainly. But it is worth sitting for a moment with what the fire also was, beyond the smoke. It was a family gathered at the edge of the yard in the blue hour. It was a father and a child and a handful of matches. It was the whole neighbourhood keeping the same small appointment with the same small flames, close enough to call out to one another across the fences. The trash was only ever the excuse, the evening was the thing, so picture it once more, the way it looked from an upstairs window. A dozen thin ribbons of smoke rising straight up in the still air, one from every backyard, each one a family finishing its day. The light going amber, then rose, then grey, the children being called in. The fires burning low and lower until the whole street settled into dark and quiet, and only the faint sweet smell of wood smoke lingered to say that anyone had been there at all. Come back inside, into the hallway, where there is a little nook that seems made for one specific purpose. It holds a small seat, a shelf worn smooth, and the heavy black telephone that anchors the whole house to the outside world. There is even a drawer for the directory, thick as a brick. You sit here when you talk, because talking on the telephone is an event, something you do sitting down with your full attention. It is a small throne built for a conversation, and it is the busiest square foot in the entire home. The telephone itself is a serious object, made of bakelite and honest weight, black and gleaming, with a rotary dial that spins back with a lazy, satisfying whir under your finger. It does not fit in a pocket. It does not follow you from room to room. It lives here, tethered to the wall by a cloth-wrapped cord, and so you must come to it, the way you would come to any important person waiting to receive you. To make a call is to arrange yourself, to sit down, to give the thing your hands and your voice and your quiet. The little bench is polished by years of sitting. Your mother perches here in the afternoon, one leg crossed over the other, the receiver tucked between shoulder and ear, catching up with her sister across town while she twists the cord absently around one finger. The gossip and the grief and the recipes of a whole family pass through this spot. You're shooed away when the talk turns serious, sent off down the hall, though you linger just far enough to catch the shape of it, the lowered voice, the long, meaningful pauses, the way adults say so much by saying so little. The directory in its drawer is a thing of wonder in its own right, the names and numbers of nearly everyone in town gathered into one heavy book, its pages thin as onion skin and soft from handling. There is a pencil kept nearby, and the margins fill up over the years with numbers jotted in a hurry. A doctor, a plumber, a cousin who moved away. When you need to reach someone you have never called, you look them up, running your finger down the columns, and there is a strange intimacy in it. Everyone in the phone book together, findable, present, part of the same shared record of who lived where. Because the telephone stays in one place, the calls have a shape to them that is hard to explain now. You cannot wander while you talk. You cannot half listen and half do something else. You sit and you are entirely there, in the conversation and nowhere else. And so the conversations tend to matter more, or at least to feel that way. When the phone rings, the whole house responds, someone calling out that they will get it, feet hurrying down the hall, because a ringing telephone is a small event and might be anyone, might be news, might be the thing you've been waiting all week to hear. There are rules, unspoken but iron. You do not call during supper, you do not call too late or too early. Long distance is expensive and reserved for occasions, birthdays, emergencies, the rare Sunday call to distant family when the rates go down, everyone crowded around the little bench to shout hello in turn while the minutes tick away like coins. A long-distance call is an event the whole family attends, passing the receiver hand to hand, and when it ends there is a hush, a sense of a window briefly open to somewhere far away, and now gently closed again. The children are taught to answer properly, to give the family name in a clear voice, to take a message on the little pad kept for exactly that. It is a small piece of growing up, being trusted with the telephone, being the one who relays that Mrs. So-and-so called and will call again after 4. You feel important standing there with a heavy receiver, a link in the chain of the household's business, entrusted for a moment with the whole apparatus of connection. It is nearly impossible to explain this to someone now, when a telephone is a slim thing that lives in every pocket and never stops chirping for attention. When a call is something you take while walking the dog or standing in line, half your mind elsewhere. Something has been gained, surely, all that reach, all that ease. But sitting here on this worn little bench, receiver warm against your ear, giving one person the whole of your attention for the length of a call, you understand that something quiet was also given up. The idea that a conversation deserved a place to sit down, that reaching another person was worth stopping everything else to do. So run your hand once more along that smooth, worn shelf. Feel the weight of the receiver, the cool of the bake light, the whir of the dial spinning home. This little corner held more of the family's heart than almost anywhere else in the house. All the joy and worry and connection funneled through one black telephone and one small polished bench. It is the kind of stillness that is harder to find now, the stillness of being wholly present with a single voice in a little throne built just for that. Pick up that same receiver on the wrong afternoon, and you will hear something odd. Another voice, mid-sentence, belonging to someone you have never met. This is the party line, a single telephone line shared between several households up and down the street. You learn to recognize your own ring among the patterns, two short and one long, and you learn too the quiet etiquette of hanging up gently when the line is already in use. Privacy is a thing you simply do without, and somehow the whole neighborhood knows a little more about each other because of it. It works like this. The telephone company cannot run a private wire to every home, not out here, not yet, and so several families are strung together on the same line like beads on a thread. When a call comes in for anyone on that line, every telephone in every one of those houses rings, but each household has its own signal in the pattern of rings, and you listen for yours the way a shepherd knows his own sheep by voice. One long, that one is for the Hendersons. Two short, that is for you. You let the others pass, or you're supposed to. But of course you don't always. Nobody always does. There is a temptation built right into the party line, the temptation of that other voice, and every child and half the adults have at some point lifted the receiver oh so gently, breath held, palm cupped over the mouthpiece just to listen. You hear things you should not. You hear the widow down the street arranging her affairs, or a courting couple whispering when they think no one is near, or your own mother's friend confiding something that makes you set the receiver down fast, cheeks hot, feeling that you have stepped where you had no business stepping. The whole neighborhood's secrets travel this one shared wire, and everyone knows it, and everyone pretends they don't. There is an etiquette to it, real and enforced. You do not stay on too long, because someone else may need to make a call, and if the doctor must be reached in a hurry, a chatty neighbor tying up the line becomes a genuine crisis. You learn to ask politely whether someone would mind ringing off. You learn to give up the line at once if you hear that another party needs it urgently. There are arguments, naturally, feuds even, between families who feel the other hogs the line, and these simmer along the fences for years. But mostly there is a rough courtesy, a sense that the line belongs to all of you together and must be shared like the well or the road. Your mother knows the voices of her party line neighbours better than she knows their faces sometimes. She can tell you who is on the line by a single word. The woman with the smoker's rasp, the man who clears his throat before every sentence, the young mother whose baby is always crying somewhere behind her voice. They are a kind of family she never chose and cannot escape, and over the years a strange fondness grows, so that when one of them takes ill, the others know before the news reaches anyone else, because they heard it happen on the line. For a child, the party line is an education in the wider world, a keyhole onto adult life. You learn that grown-ups have troubles and tendernesses you never suspected, that the calm faces you see over the fences hide whole complicated lives. You learn discretion too, eventually the hard way, the day you repeat something you overheard and see your mother's face go pale and stern. Some things you hear on the line, she tells you, you carry to your grave, and you understand dimly that the shared wire runs on a kind of honour, and that honour is the only thing keeping the whole delicate arrangement from flying apart. It is nearly unimaginable now, this casual, constant nearness to strangers, this life lived within earshot of the neighbours, whether you liked it or not. Today we guard our privacy like a treasure, each of us on our own private line, able to speak for hours without another soul possibly overhearing. And that is a comfort, surely, a kind of dignity restored. But something was lost when the last party line went quiet too. Something about being woven willy-nilly into the lives of the people around you, obliged to know them, obliged to make room for them, obliged to share. The private lines came in time, of course, one house after another cut loose from the shared wire, and each family felt the relief of it, the sudden luxury of a telephone that rang only for them. But some of the old-timers would admit, if you asked, that they missed it a little, missed knowing the voices, missed the accidental closeness, missed being part of something larger than their own four walls, even if that something sometimes eavesdropped. So the next time you lift a telephone and hear only silence waiting for you, spare a thought for the crowded, murmuring line that came before, where every call was half a conversation with the whole neighbourhood. It is the kind of togetherness that is harder to find now, this being tangled up in each other's lives without meaning to be, listening for your own ring among all the others, and hanging up gently, always gently, for the sake of whoever came next. Walk from room to room and count them if you like. There is one on the coffee table, one on the nightstand, one balanced on the arm of the good chair, one in the bathroom, one waiting politely by the front door. Ashtrays are not a habit here. They are furniture, as ordinary as a lamp or a coaster. When guests arrive, you set them out the way you might set out cloth napkins. The whole house carries that warm, ever-present smell, and to everyone living in it, that smell is simply what a home smells like. They come in every form imaginable, these ashtrays, and some of them are genuinely beautiful. Heavy-cut glass that throws little rainbows in the afternoon light. Ceramic ones shaped like fish or seashells brought back from a trip to the coast. A grand freestanding one on a slender chrome pole beside your father's chair, with a little button on top that spins the tray and tips the ashes down into a hidden well below. They're given as wedding gifts. They're displayed with pride. A fine ashtray is a thing a household can be proud of, and yours holds a place of honour on the coffee table, polished and waiting. The smoking itself is simply everywhere, woven so tightly into daily life that no one sees it as a choice. Your father lights up after supper with his coffee, the match flaring, the first blue plume rising toward the ceiling. Your mother has her own, held with a certain elegance, a habit she picked up before you were born and thinks nothing of. Guests are offered a cigarette the moment they sit down, the pack tapped and extended, a lighter produced, a small warm ceremony of welcome. To offer someone a light is to offer them your friendship. It is manners. It is hospitality. It is what a good host does. The smell settles into everything. The curtains, the upholstery, the very plaster of the walls, so that it becomes the baseline scent of home, undetectable to the people who live there and instantly recognizable to anyone who steps in from outside. It mingles with the coffee and the cooking and the furniture polish into that particular perfume that is your house, and no other. The smell you will chase for the rest of your life and never quite find again. Years from now, a single stray whiff of it will drop you straight back into this living room, into this exact golden afternoon, and your throat will tighten with something you cannot name. The children have their small jobs here too. Emptying the ashtrays is one of them, carrying them carefully so as not to spill, tapping them out into the trash, wiping them clean with a rag, setting them back exactly where they belong. You learn to do it without a second thought. You learn the different weights of the different trays, the way the glass ones need 2 hands. It is a chore like any other, like drying the dishes or sweeping the porch, and it never once occurs to you or to anyone that there is anything strange about a child spending part of each day tending to the family's ashtrays. The doctors in these years are no help at all. Some of them smoke in their own offices, cigarette resting in an ashtray on the desk while they listen to your chest. The advertisements show physicians recommending one brand over another, athletes praising the way a cigarette steadies the nerves, movie stars wreathed in glamorous smoke. There's no warning anywhere, no small print, no worry. The whole culture agrees, quietly and completely, that this is fine, that this is sophisticated, that this is simply what grown people do. And so, the ashtrays multiply, one for every room, ready for every occasion. We know how this story turns, of course. We know what all that smoke was doing while everyone breathed it in and called it home. In time, the warnings would come, and the smell would slowly retreat. First from the airplanes, then the restaurants, then the offices, then the houses themselves, until a home with an ashtray in every room became a strange museum piece, hard for younger people to picture at all. The change was for the good, plainly, undeniably. Lives were saved by the millions. There is nothing to mourn in the retreat of the smoke, and yet, if you grew up in one of these houses, the smell is tangled up with everything you loved. It is your father's chair, and your mother's laugh, and the sound of the radio on a Sunday. It is company come to call, the good ashtrays out, the grown-ups' talk drifting up the stairs while you drifted off to sleep. The habit was harmful, yes, and we are wiser now and grateful for it. But the smell was, for a whole generation, simply the smell of being safe and small and home. So take one last look around this room, at the cut glass catching the light, at the little chrome-poled tray by the chair, at all these ordinary objects that a whole world has since quietly set aside. Nobody here questions them. Nobody imagines a home without them. It is the kind of thing that seemed permanent and turned out not to be, the kind of ordinary that a family lives inside without ever once seeing, until one day it is gone and only the memory of the smell remains. Now, into the front room, to the sofa wrapped snugly in clear, crinkling plastic. Your mother bought that couch to last a lifetime, and by heaven it is going to. So it sits sealed beneath a shining second skin that squeaks when you sit and sticks to the backs of your legs in July. It is not comfortable. It was never meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be preserved, like something in a museum, for a special occasion that seems to arrive far less often than the plastic would suggest. You know the sound of it before you know anything else. That high, crackling protest the moment anyone lowers themselves onto it. A sound like a small distant fire, like cellophane being crushed in a fist. There is no sitting quietly on this couch. It announces every visitor, every shift of weight, every restless child, and your mother can tell from the kitchen exactly who has sat where and how much they are fidgeting. The plastic is a kind of alarm system, an informant, a squeaking witness to every crime committed against the good furniture. In summer it is a particular torment. Bare legs meet the warm plastic and adhere instantly, so that standing up becomes an operation, a slow peeling accompanied by that unmistakable suction sound and a red imprint left on the skin. The plastic holds the heat and gives none of it back, so that you sweat where you sit, and the backs of your knees stick, and you shift and squeak and shift again, and your mother tells you to sit still. which on this couch is a thing very nearly impossible to do. But you understand, even as a child, why it is there. That couch cost real money, money the family did not have to spare, money saved for and decided upon and delivered with ceremony. It is the finest thing in the house. The upholstery a rich brocade in a colour your mother chose after agonising for weeks, and the thought of it wearing thin, of a stain, of a child's grubby hand on the arm, is more than she can bear. So the plastic goes on the day it arrives, and it does not come off. The couch beneath is beautiful and untouched, a promise kept to some future self, some occasion grand enough to finally deserve it. That occasion is theoretical mostly. The minister comes, and even then the plastic stays. The relatives come at Christmas and the plastic stays. There's always some reason it is not quite the right time to unveil the couch in its naked glory. Always some sense that the truly special day is still ahead, still coming, still worth waiting for. And so the family lives its whole life alongside a couch preserved for a moment that never quite arrives, admiring the brocade through its shining shroud, never once feeling it against their skin. The neighbours do the same, most of them. Walk into any front room on the block, and you will find the same gleaming plastic, the same preserved perfection, the same faint squeak greeting every guest. It is a shared understanding, a whole generation's agreement about what furniture is for, which is to say, not entirely for sitting. Furniture is an investment. Furniture is a statement. Furniture is a thing you protect, the way you protect anything you worked hard to have and are afraid, deep down, of losing. There is something in it, if you look, that goes beyond the couch. It is the caution of people who remembered doing without. Your mother, your grandmother, they had lived through years when there was no money for a fine sofa or anything like it, when things had to last because there was nothing to replace them with. The plastic is the scar of that lean time, the reflex of people who could not quite believe their good fortune and were terrified of squandering it. Preserve the couch, and you preserve the proof that you made it, that you climbed up out of the hard years into a house with a brocade sofa in the front room. It is easy to laugh at now, the squeaking, the sticking, the couch too precious to be a couch. Today we buy furniture expecting to replace it, sink into it gratefully, let it wear and stain and soften into the shape of us, and there is a kind of freedom in that, an ease your mother never allowed herself. But there was something in her caution too that we have mostly lost, a sense that a thing well made deserved to be honoured, that not everything should be used up carelessly, that some objects were worth protecting simply because you had wanted them so long and so hard. So sit down on it once more if you dare and let it squeak its objection, and feel the plastic cool and slick beneath you. Somewhere under that shining skin is a beautiful couch nobody ever quite got to enjoy, save for a someday that stayed always just out of reach. It is a small, funny, tender thing, this monument to caution in the middle of the front room, and it says more about the people who lived here, about their fears and their hopes and their hard-won pride, than almost anything else in the house. And here is the strangest thing of all about that front room. You're not really allowed in it. This is the good living room, the parlour kept pristine for guests, for the minister, for company that matters. The lamps are dusted, the cushions are plumped, and the door might as well have an invisible rope across it. The family actually lives somewhere else, in the den or the kitchen, while this beautiful, silent room waits all week for visitors who rarely come. It is a room saved for a life that is always just about to happen. It is the finest room in the house, and it is barely a room at all, in the sense of being lived in. The carpet holds the fresh tracks of the vacuum in perfect parallel rows, undisturbed by feet. The good lamps, with their pleated shades still wrapped in a whisper of cellophane, are switched on only when someone worth impressing is expected. The mantel holds the wedding photographs and the good clock and perhaps a figurine or two, a shepherdess, a pair of porcelain birds, arranged just so and dusted with a care bordering on reverence. Everything gleams. Everything waits. You pass by its doorway a dozen times a day and rarely cross the threshold. There is no sign forbidding it, but there does not need to be. You feel the rule in the very air of the place, the held breath stillness, the sense of a stage set and lit for a performance that keeps being postponed. To wander in and flop down on the good sofa would be a small sacrilege, and you know it without ever being told, the way you know not to run in church. This room is not for you. This room is for the idea of company, for the version of the family that receives important guests, a version that exists mostly on the other side of that doorway. The real living happens elsewhere, and everyone knows it. It happens in the kitchen, warm and cluttered and smelling of supper, where homework is done at the table, and the radio plays and your mother moves between the stove and the sink. It happens in the den, if the house is lucky enough to have one, where the television glows and the furniture is allowed to be sat upon, and the good rug is not, thank goodness, in danger. The family piles together in these humbler rooms, comfortable and unguarded, while the parlour keeps its silent vigil down the hall. When company does come, the transformation is remarkable. The good room wakes up, the lamps come on, the plastic slides off the couch, the ashtrays are set out, and the family arranges itself on the very furniture it is forbidden to touch the rest of the week. Everyone slightly stiff, slightly on their best behaviour, performing the role of a household at ease. Coffee is served in the good cups. The children are trotted out to say hello and then dismissed. For an hour or two the room fulfills its purpose, and then the guests depart, and the plastic goes back on, and the room settles once more into its long, patient wait. There is a whole philosophy tucked into this if you look at it. The parlour is aspiration-made architecture, a physical space set aside for the family you meant to be, the impressive, gracious, company-receiving family, rather than the ordinary tired one that actually lives here. It is the best of everything held in reserve, protected from the wear of daily life, kept ready for a finer occasion, and there is dignity in it, a certain hopefulness, this insistence on keeping one room always perfect, always ready, always worthy of the important moment whenever it might finally come. But there is a sadness in it too, and you feel it even as a child passing that doorway, glimpsing the beautiful untouched room. All that comfort, saved and never spent. The best sofa, sat on twice a year. The good lamps, dark most nights. A whole room of the house held apart from the family's real life, guarding itself against the very living it was built to hold. It is a room in permanent anticipation, and anticipation held too long starts to look a great deal like waiting for something that is not going to come. We mostly do not do this anymore. The formal parlour has quietly dissolved into the great open rooms of the modern house, where the family sprawls and eats and watches and lives all in one place, nothing held back, nothing forbidden, the good furniture and the everyday furniture one and the same. And that is a kind of honesty, a refusal to save our best selves for company. But something was lost too in the vanishing of that patient perfect room, some sense that the family had a finer version of itself worth keeping ready, some space set apart from the ordinary and kept, always a little bit sacred. So look in through that doorway one last time, at the vacuum lines in the carpet, the shepherdess on the mantel, the lamps waiting to be lit. a whole beautiful room, hushed and gleaming, saved for a life always just about to happen. It is the kind of quiet that is harder to find now, the quiet of a space kept perfect out of hope, and it waited all week, every week, for a company that was really only ever the family's dream of who they might someday be. Back in the hall, mind your step, because right in the middle of the floor is a great iron grate, warm to the touch. Beneath it, a single furnace pushes heat up through this one dramatic opening, and on cold mornings you stand right over it in your bare feet and let the warmth billow up around your nightclothes like something out of a dream. It is the coziest spot in the house, and, quietly, one of the most dangerous, though no one thinks of it that way. You just know it as the warm place, the place you race to on winter mornings. The grate is a heavy thing, black iron worked into a pattern of scrolls and squares, set flush into the floorboards where the hall opens toward the stairs. In the deep of a winter night, the furnace in the basement labours away, coal fed into its glowing belly, and all that heat rises through the ducts and pours up through this single opening in a great soft column. Stand over it and it finds you at once, curling up under a nightgown or the hem of pyjamas, wrapping you in warmth from the feet up, and there is no feeling quite like it, no radiator or vent that has ever matched that billowing rush of heat rising straight from the heart of the house. On the coldest mornings, the whole family takes turns. You come down the stairs shivering, breath faintly visible, floorboards like ice underfoot, and you make straight for the grate, and you stand there, and you are transformed. The heat rises and the cold retreats, and for a few blessed minutes you simply bask, toasting first one side and then the other, letting the warmth chase the last of the night's chill out of your bones. There is jostling for the spot. There is a strict, unwritten order of who gets the grate and for how long, and woe to the sibling who lingers past their turn while another waits hopping on the cold planks. The iron itself grows hot, sometimes very hot, and this is the danger nobody quite reckons with. A bare foot planted too long, a child who sits directly on it, and the pattern of the grate can print itself into skin in a way that is remembered for days. Everyone knows someone with the story. The toddler who crawled onto it, the guest in stockinged feet who yelped and hopped away, and yet the grate stays, uncovered, in the middle of the floor, warm and waiting, because the comfort of it so far outweighs the risk in everyone's mind that the risk is scarcely considered at all. There is a whole small culture that grows up around the grate. It is where you dress on winter mornings, hauling your school clothes down to warm them over the rising heat before pulling them on, so that even your shirt is toasty against your skin. It is where the cat sleeps, curled directly on the warm iron, more sensible than any of you. It is where wet mittens are laid to dry, where a chilled visitor is steered the moment they come in stamping snow from their boots. The grate is the hearth of the modern house, the gathering point, the one spot the whole household orbits when the weather turns cruel. Your mother knows to sweep around it carefully because things fall through, coins and buttons and small treasures vanishing down into the ductwork below, lost to the warm dark. And your father knows the furnace that feeds it intimately, its moods, its appetite, the ritual of banking the coal at night so it will still be glowing at dawn. The heat that pours up through the grate is not automatic or invisible the way it would later become. It is tended. It is made down in the basement by hand and by labour, and it rises up through this one iron opening as the direct and grateful gift of that work. It is hard to imagine now, when heat comes silent and even from vents you never look at, warming every room to the same mild sameness, that a whole house once concentrated its warmth into one glorious, dangerous spot in the hall. We are more comfortable now, surely, and safer. No iron hot enough to brand a foot, no coal to shovel, no cold rooms upstairs while the grate keeps the hall alone toasty. The even warmth of a modern house is a genuine kindness, but it is a warmth without a centre, without a place, without that magical rising column you could stand inside of on a January dawn, because that is the thing the grate had that our vents do not. It had a place, it had ceremony, it had the small daily drama of the race downstairs, the jostling for the spot, the whole family taking turns to be warmed at the one warm heart of the house. It gathered you. It made a ritual out of something we now receive without noticing at all, so stand over it once more in your bare feet, in the cold blue light of a winter morning, and feel the heat come billowing up around you, wrapping you like a held breath, chasing the night away. It is the kind of comfort that is harder to find now. Warmth you can stand inside of, warmth that has a place and a shape and a small history all its own. The cosiest spot in the house, and one of the most perilous, and nobody thought twice about either, because on a morning that cold the grate was simply the best place in the whole world to be. Let's go down the cellar stairs now, into the cool dampness where the laundry lives. The washing machine here does not spin the water out on its own. Instead there are 2 rubber rollers up top, and your mother feeds each heavy sodden garment through by hand, cranking it until the water squeezes out in a flat rush. It is careful work, and you've been warned 100 times to keep your fingers clear. Wash day takes hours and leaves the whole basement smelling of soap and steam. It is exhausting, and it is simply Monday. Monday is wash day, always, the whole neighbourhood keeping the same schedule as if by law, and it begins early. Your mother fills the machine's tub from a hose, heats water on the stove above and carries it down in kettles, shaves soap into flakes or measures out the powder, and gets the whole heavy business underway before you are properly awake. The machine churns and sloshes, an agitator turning the clothes over and over in the grey soapy water, and the sound of it fills the basement, a rhythmic wet thumping that means the day's real labour has begun. The wringer is the heart of it, and the terror of it both. Those 2 rubber rollers, mounted above the tub and turned by a crank or a small motor, are how the water comes out since the machine cannot spin. Your mother lifts each dripping garment from the tub, guides one end into the gap between the rollers, and feeds it through, and the fabric emerges on the other side pressed flat as paper, the water sheeting off in a sudden rush back into the tub. It is oddly satisfying to watch, this transformation of a sodden heavy thing into a flat wrung one, and you love to watch it, from a safe and respectful distance, because the wringer does not know the difference between a shirt and a hand. This is the warning drilled into every child of the era, repeated until it lodges in the bone: keep your fingers clear. The rollers grip and pull with a patient mechanical strength, and if a finger goes in with the fabric, the whole hand can follow, up the arm, and the stories of it are grim and everywhere. The reason there is always a release bar, a way to spring the rollers apart in an emergency. Your mother works the wringer with a wary respect, sleeves rolled up, watchful, and she does not let you near it. Not really. Not until you are old enough to fear it properly yourself. The work of it is relentless. Wash the load, wring it, rinse it in a fresh tub, wring it again, and for whites there is bluing and starch and sometimes a boil on the stove above. Load after load, the darks and the lights and the sheets and the work clothes, each one fed through the wringer by hand, until your mother's arms ache and her hands are pruned and raw from the hot water and the soap. The basement grows thick with steam, the small window fogging over, the smell of soap and damp and hot fabric hanging in the cool air. It is the hardest day of her week, and it comes every single week, without fail, without mercy. And yet there is a rhythm to it, even a kind of pride. Your mother knows her machine, its quirks, the exact feel of a garment wrung just right, neither too dry to rinse nor too wet to hang. She has a system, an order, a way of moving through the mountain of it that turns chaos into method. Sometimes a neighbour comes down to help, or she goes to help another, and the wash day becomes companionable. Two women feeding the wringer and talking over the churn of the machine, the labour lightened by the company. It is work, but it is women's work done together, and there is a warmth in that the machine could never wring out. For a child, the basement on wash day is a place of fascination and forbidden edges. You're allowed to watch, to carry, to fetch, but not to touch the wringer, and so it holds all the allure of the genuinely dangerous. You learn the weight of wet cloth, the effort in your mother's arms, the sheer scale of what it takes simply to keep a family in clean clothes. You do not yet understand it as unfairness or hardship. You understand it only as Monday, as the way things are, as your mother down in the steamy basement doing the enormous invisible work that keeps the whole household running. It is almost impossible to convey now, when a machine takes the laundry and washes it and spins it nearly dry with no hand needed at all. How much labour once lived in that one word, laundry. We drop the clothes in and walk away and think nothing of it, and that ease is as genuine liberation. Hours and hours of a woman's week handed back to her, arms spared, fingers safe. There is nothing romantic about the wringer that any woman who used one would want back. The freedom of the modern machine is real, and hard-won, and good. But go down those cellar stairs once more into the soap and the steam, and watch your mother at her work, sleeves rolled, feeding each garment through with such practised care. There is something there worth honouring, even if the labour itself deserves no nostalgia. Something about the sheer devotion of it, the enormous unseen effort poured out week after week to keep her family clothed and clean. It was exhausting, and it was dangerous, and it was simply Monday. And she did it, and did it again the next week, and the strength of that is the kind of thing that is easy to forget now, humming quietly in a machine that asks nothing of anyone at all. Follow the wet laundry back up and out into the light, to the rope stretched between two poles across the yard. There are no dryers humming here. There is only the sun, the breeze, and a canvas bag of wooden pins. You pin the sheets up in long white sails and watch them snap and billow, and when you gather them in that evening, they carry a smell that no machine has ever managed to bottle. The clean, particular scent of a whole day spent outdoors. It is work. It is also, if you let it be, a kind of peace. The line runs the length of the yard, sometimes 2 lines, sometimes 3, strung taut between wooden crossposts your father set in the ground, and there is an art to using it that your mother has mastered completely. She carries the heavy basket out, still damp and smelling of soap from the basement below, and she works down the line with the practiced speed of someone who has done this 10,000 times. A pin in her mouth, a garment shaken out, up and pinned in one motion, the whole wash rising into the air behind her like a fleet-setting sail. There is an order to it that everyone on the block seems to know. The sheets and the big things go up first, on the outermost lines where the wind can catch them fullest. The whites are hung with the whites, the colours with the colours. The unmentionables, the private things, are hung discreetly on an inner line where the sheets will screen them from the street, because the neighbours can see your wash, all of it, and a woman is quietly judged by the whiteness of her whites and the neatness of her line. It is a small public performance, wash day, everyone's laundry flying like flags for the whole neighbourhood to read, and oh, the sound of it, and the sight. The sheets fill with wind and belly out and snap, a soft percussive crack that carries across the yards. Shirts wave their empty arms. The whole line dances and billows, casting shifting shadows on the grass, and on a good drying day, a bright breezy day with the sun high, the yard becomes a moving field of white and colour, alive with the wind. A child can lose an afternoon running through the wet sheets, in and out of the billowing corridors, damp cotton slapping cool against the face, until a mother's voice calls a warning about grass stains and the game must move elsewhere. The weather rules everything. A wash day is chosen for its sky, and the whole enterprise can be undone in a moment by a surprise cloud. There is particular panic that runs down a street when rain threatens with the wash still out. Mothers hurrying into their yards from all directions, snatching pins, gathering armloads of half-dry laundry, calling to one another across the fences. And there is a particular defeat in the wash that freezes stiff on the line in winter, brought in board hard and set to thaw over chairs by the stove, the whole house draped in laundry when the outdoors turns against you. But on the right day, there is nothing like it. The work of hanging is real, arms lifting, the endless bending to the basket, the pins that split and the line that sags. But it is done in the fresh air, in the sun, with the sky overhead and the neighbours near, and it is a gentler labour than the steaming basement below. Your mother might straighten between garments to feel the breeze, to trade a word over the fence, to watch a bird, and there is a rhythm to it that can settle a troubled mind, the up and the pin and the down, over and over in the clean open air. And then the smell. This is the thing no one who knew it ever forgets, and no machine has ever managed to reproduce, though many have tried. Laundry dried on the line comes in carrying the whole day with it, the sun and the wind and the faint green of the grass, a smell so clean and particular that catching it decades later can bring tears to the eyes. You bury your face in a sheet fresh off the line and breathe it in, and it is the smell of summer, of childhood, of your mother's careful work, of an afternoon spent entirely outdoors. It is sunlight made into a scent, and it is gone the moment you put those sheets on the bed and lie down in them, replaced by the sweeter smell of sleep. We have traded all of this for the tumbling drum, the dryer that finishes the wash in an hour whatever the weather, no sky to consult, no pins, no basket to haul, no race against the rain, and it is a marvellous convenience, undeniably, hours and worry lifted clean away. Nobody who hauled a wet basket across a winter yard would trade back for principle. But something drifted off with the last of the line-dried sheets too, some connection to the weather and the neighbours and the plain honest labour done in the open air, and above all that smell, that irreplaceable smell, that a whole generation carried in memory long after the last pin was pulled. So stand in the yard once more, in the sun and the snapping wind, among the sheets rising white against the blue. Your mother works down the line, a pin in her mouth, the wash climbing into the air behind her. It is work, real and unending, the same work waiting again next Monday. But it is also, if you let it be, a kind of peace, a slow bright hour in the open air, and it left behind a smell that is harder to find now. The smell of a whole day of sunlight folded into the sheets, waiting to wrap around you as you drift off to sleep. Now to the kitchen and the heavy heart of it, the refrigerator, and inside the freezer, that cold aluminum tray. To free the ice, you lift a metal lever, and with a satisfying teeth-tingling crack, the cubes loosen all at once. The tray is freezing to the touch and always a little stubborn, sometimes surrendering a cascade of cubes and sometimes just one lonely square. It is loud, it is cold, it is faintly violent, and it is the sound of a summer afternoon about to get a little more bearable. The tray itself is a serious piece of hardware, gleaming aluminum with a hinged handle running down its spine, and it lives in the tiny frost-caked freezer compartment tucked inside the top of the refrigerator. Reaching for it is a small ordeal in July, your hand plunging into that cramped, icy box, fingers going numb against the frost that furs every surface, groping past the ice cream and the frozen peas until you find the tray, welded faintly to the shelf by its own cold. You work it free with a tug, and it comes away trailing a little cloud of frozen breath, and already your fingertips are aching with that deep aluminum chill. Then comes the lever, and there is a knack to it that every child eventually masters. You set the tray on the counter, grip the handle, and pull it up and back, and the whole mechanism heaves the divider walls apart with that sharp cracking report, a sound that runs right up your teeth and into your jaw. Done right, the cubes leap loose all at once, a small avalanche of ice tumbling and sliding across the divider. Done wrong, the tray fights you, the lever half lifting, one corner surrendering while the rest cling stubbornly to their compartments, and you must run the whole thing under the tap and start again, muttering, while somebody waits impatiently for their drink. Your fingers pay a price either way. The aluminum is so cold it seems to burn, and handling the tray for more than a moment leaves your fingertips aching and red, that particular deep cold that lingers long after you have set the tray down. The cubes themselves stick to wet skin, welding fast to a curious finger, and there is a whole small comedy of prying them loose again, of a child yelping and shaking a hand while an ice cube clings on like a burr. You learn to work quickly, to grab and dump and shove the refilled tray back into the freezer before the cold can defeat you entirely. There is a whole etiquette around the tray that the household enforces without ever quite writing down. You do not, under any circumstances, put an empty tray back in the freezer. To do so is a small domestic crime, discovered later by whoever next comes seeking ice on a sweltering afternoon, and it is grounds for genuine grievance. So you refill it at the tap, carefully, not too full, or it will freeze into one solid welded block, and you slide it back level so the cubes come out square, and you consider yourself to have done your part. The tray, empty or full, is a running conversation about fairness in the family, about who takes and who replenishes. On a scorching afternoon, though, all of it is worth the trouble. There is real ceremony in the making of a cold drink in those years, the crack of the lever, the clatter of cubes into a glass, the pour of lemonade or iced tea over the top, the whole thing sweating instantly in the heat, so that a ring forms on the table within a minute. Somebody is always sent to make the ice, and somebody is always complaining that the tray was left empty, and the refilling of it is a standing household duty nobody quite wants. But the reward is that first cold swallow, on a day when the air itself seems to shimmer, and the ice knocking against your teeth, and for that the numb fingers are a small price indeed. The tray shapes the summer in small ways. Iced tea sweats in a pitcher on the counter, and its ice must be replenished from the tray again and again through a long hot day. A skinned knee is soothed with a cube wrapped in a dish towel. On the very hottest nights, a child might be caught simply standing at the open freezer, pressing a cube to the back of the neck, letting it melt and run, cool down the spine, until a parent's voice calls out to close that door and stop letting the cold escape. The ice is precious, made slowly, spent gratefully, and there is never quite enough of it when the heat is at its worst. It is almost gone now, that little ritual, replaced by machines that drop the ice into your glass at the push of a lever you never have to touch. Cold and effortless and silent, a whole bin of it always waiting. And that is a convenience surely. No more numb fingers, no more empty trays, no more wrestling with the crack of stubborn aluminum. But something small was lost too. Some sense of ice as a thing you made with your own cold hands, earned with a wince and a satisfying crack, counted out cube by cube because there was only ever so much. So listen for it once more, that sharp, teeth-tingling report on a summer afternoon, the sound of relief arriving one stubborn tray at a time. Back to the den, where the television sits like an honoured guest. This is no thin panel hung on a wall. It is a great wooden cabinet, polished and dignified, with a small curved screen set in the middle of all that furniture. When it is off, it is simply another handsome piece in the room, doilies and framed photographs arranged on top. When it warms to life, the whole family gathers before it, and the glow flickers across their faces in the dark. There are only a few channels, and when the last one signs off at night, you all just go to bed. The set is enormous, and mostly wood, a proper cabinet on stubby legs, the finish rubbed to a warm shine, and treated with the same care as any fine piece the family owns. The screen is small in proportion to all that timber, rounded at the corners, the glass thick and slightly bulging, and it is grey and lifeless when the set is dark. On top sit the ordinary sacred objects of the household, a lace runner, a bowl, the framed faces of grandparents and graduates, so that even the television must earn its keep as a shelf for the things that matter. It is not a gadget. It is a monument, delivered with ceremony, admired by the neighbours, the single most expensive thing in the room and possibly the house. Turning it on is not instant. You pull the knob and nothing happens, not at first, only a faint hum and a growing warmth as the tubes inside come slowly to life. Then a pinpoint of light blooms in the centre of the dark glass and spreads outward, and the picture swims up out of the grey, wavering, settling, resolving at last into a face, a programme, a window onto somewhere else. You learn to allow for this, to turn the set on a few minutes early, to wait through its slow waking the way you might wait for a kettle. And when you switch it off, the picture collapses back down to a single bright dot in the centre of the screen, which lingers for a moment in the dark before winking out, a small nightly farewell. There are only a handful of channels, and you turn between them with a heavy dial that clicks from number to number, most of them landing on snow and static. When the picture rolls or fuzzes, someone adjusts the dials on the front, the vertical hold, the horizontal, coaxing the image back into place. And there is a whole folklore of remedies for a set on the blink, a smack on the side of the cabinet that seems, improbably, to work, or the long wait while a father fetches a new tube and tests them one by one against the glowing rack at the drugstore. The television is a thing that must be tended, coaxed, occasionally scolded, and the family knows its moods the way it knows the weather, and gather they do. In the evening the den fills, everyone drawn to the one glowing screen, arranged on the good chairs and the floor and the arms of the sofa. the youngest sprawled on the rug too close to the glass and told to move back. You'll ruin your eyes. There is no choosing your own program in another room, no second set upstairs. There is one television and one thing on it, and so the family watches together, whatever it is, and the choosing of what to watch is itself a small negotiation, a democracy of sorts, the whole household reaching a treaty over the single dial. They laugh together, hush one another, lean forward together at the exciting parts. The glow flickers over all their faces at once, blue-white in the darkened room, and for those hours they are one audience, one household, held in the same soft light and the same unfolding story. Neighbours come by to watch a programme the family down the street cannot get, or to see some great event that only one set on the block brings in clearly, and the den fills past its capacity, everyone crowded in together, sharing the one bright window into the wider world. Late at night, the programming simply ends. The last show finishes, an announcer bids you good night, and then comes the anthem, the flag rippling on the screen, and after it the test pattern and finally the hiss and snow of a station gone to sleep. That is the signal that the day is truly over, plain and unarguable. You do not scroll on into the small hours. The television itself tells you when to stop, and you obey it, switching off the set and watching the picture shrink to its single dying dot, and going up to bed in the sudden ringing quiet. It is a different thing entirely now, the screen that is everywhere and always on, that follows you room to room and asks nothing of you but to keep watching, that never runs out and never bids you good night. We have endless choice now, and no waiting, and no snow, and no one to send up to the roof. But something warm was lost when the family stopped gathering at the one glowing cabinet, all of them together in the flickering dark, holding their single treaty over what to watch. It is the kind of togetherness that is harder to find now. One screen, one room, one family, and a kindly station that told you, at last, when it was time to rest. Step outside once more and look up. Rising off the rooftop is a great skeletal contraption of metal poles and crosspieces, catching signals out of the very air. When the picture goes fuzzy, someone climbs up or fiddles with a dial, and a voice calls from the yard, "Is that better? Is that better now?" Every house on the street wears one of these strange metal crowns, all of them reaching in slightly different directions. From the sidewalk, the whole neighbourhood looks like it is listening for something far away. The antenna is a genuine feat of amateur engineering, an array of aluminum rods branching off a central mast, bolted to the chimney or the eave, and guyed with wires against the wind. It reaches up above the roof line into the clear air where the signals fly, plucking invisible broadcasts out of nothing and sending them down a flat brown wire that runs along the eaves, in through a window frame and across the floor to the great wooden cabinet in the den. There is something almost alive about the whole street because of it, every house crowned with its own reaching skeleton, all of them tilted this way and that toward distant towers you cannot see, but somehow trust are there. Reception is a temperamental thing forever slipping. A passing plane can ripple the picture into waves. A storm can drown it in snow. A gusting wind can nudge the antenna a few degrees off its aim and turn a clear program into a ghostly double image. A second faint face hovering beside the first, and then begins the familiar ordeal. Someone must go up, onto a ladder, onto the roof itself, gripping the mast and turning it slowly by hand, while a relay of voices carries the verdict from the den to the yard to the roof. A little worse. No, back the other way. There. Hold it right there. Don't move. It is dangerous work, this rooftop tuning, and it is done casually, by fathers in shirt sleeves and older brothers with more nerve than sense. balanced against the pitch of the roof with a wrench in one hand and the mast in the other. Nobody thinks much of the risk. It is simply what one does when the picture goes bad. The way one changes a bulb or fixes a leaking tap. A small domestic repair that happens to take place 2 or 3 stories up in the wind. A mother stands below with a hand shading her eyes, calling up both the reception report and, in a different tone entirely, the reminder to be careful up there. The whole family plays its part in the ritual. One stationed at the set to watch the picture, one at the window to relay, one on the roof to turn. It is a chain of shouted communication strung through the whole house and out into the sky. A small collaborative drama repeated whenever a favourite programme dissolves into static at the worst possible moment. And there is a real triumph when it comes right. When the ghost snaps into a single clear image and the voice at the window cries, "That's it. That's perfect. Don't touch it." And the figure on the roof carefully lets go and begins the nervous climb back down. The antennas make the neighbourhood legible from the street, each one a small declaration that here too lives a family gathered around a glowing screen. They point in their slightly different directions, like a field of strange metal flowers all turned towards some sun only they can sense. And on a windy day you can watch them tremble and sway and lean, the whole street quietly straining to hear. There is a kinship in it, every rooftop reaching for the same far-off towers, every family pulling the same broadcast down out of the same shared sky, so that when a great event was on, you knew that behind every one of those antennas a family sat watching the very thing you watched. They also mark the passage of a certain kind of time. A new antenna going up on a roof was news, a sign a family had bought their first set, a small announcement of arrival that the neighbours noted and remarked upon. The roof lines filled in year by year, house after house sprouting its crown, until a street without antennas would have looked strange indeed, a street somehow left behind by the times. They are mostly gone now, pulled down or left to rust, made obsolete first by cable snaking quietly underground, and then by signals that arrive with no antenna at all, pictures crisp and certain no matter which way the wind blows. And that is a mercy, surely. No more climbing onto icy roofs, no more ghostly doubles, no more relay of shouted directions through a whole anxious house. But the skyline lost something when the antennas came down, some sense of a whole neighbourhood reaching upward together, listening as one for something far away. So look up one last time at that metal crown against the evening sky, trembling faintly in the breeze, aimed at a tower somewhere over the horizon. Every house wore one, and every family sent someone up to tune it, and the whole street stood listening for the same distant signal. It is the kind of shared striving that is harder to see now, a neighbourhood of rooftops all reaching for the same sky, hoping together for a clearer picture. Return to the kitchen counter and that curved tin box with the roll-top door. Inside lives the bread, the day-old rolls, the sweet things kept close but out of sight. There is a small ritual to it, the soft rattle of the lid rolling back, the warm yeasted smell that greets you, the reaching in for a slice before supper you are told not to spoil. Bread comes fresh and often, and it belongs here, in its own little house within the house. It is such a small thing. It is also the smell of coming home. The box sits in its appointed corner of the counter, painted tin gone soft at the edges from years of hands, its ribbed lid rolling up and down in a track with a sound like a small contented sigh. Summer enamel, cheerful red or cream, decorated with a painted rooster or a sheaf of wheat or a spray of flowers, and some are plain metal worn to a dull shine by decades of use. Whatever its dress, It holds the same office in every kitchen, guardian of the bread, keeper of the loaf against the staleness of the open air and the appetites of mice and children alike. And it is as fixed a feature of the counter as the sink or the stove. There is bread in it nearly always, because bread is the backbone of the table here, present at every meal in one form or another. A bakery loaf, or one your mother made herself wrapped in waxed paper or its own thin paper sleeve, the heel of yesterday's bread saved for toast or for pudding, a few rolls kept back from Sunday dinner. Perhaps, if you are lucky, something sweeter tucked in the back, a coffee cake under a tea towel, a few donuts in a paper bag, a treat you are not supposed to know about and absolutely certainly do. Opening it is one of childhood's small, reliable pleasures. You roll back the lid quietly if you're up to something, and there rises that warm particular smell, yeast and flour and sweetness, the smell of the staff of life kept close in the dark. You reach in and tear off the soft end of a loaf, or lift out a roll sworn to secrecy, warned 100 times not to spoil your supper, doing it anyway because a hunk of fresh bread in the late afternoon is one of the great uncomplicated joys of being small, and the roll of that lid is a sound you learn to make softly, so as not to summon a mother's ears from the next room. The bread box keeps a rhythm with the household's week. It fills when the bread is fresh and empties as the days go on, and its emptiness is a quiet signal that a trip to the bakery or a morning of baking is due. Your mother knows its state without looking, the way she knows everything in her kitchen, and she manages the bread within it with the same thrift she brings to all things, letting nothing go to waste. The stale ends find their way into stuffing and crumbs and puddings and French toast, every last slice put to use, because bread is precious, and throwing it out would be a small sin against everything she was raised to believe. There is a whole art to keeping bread in that tin box too, before the days of preservatives that make a loaf last a fortnight. Bread went stale quickly then, in a day or two, and the box was a defence against that, a snug, dark place that held the moisture a little longer. Your mother knew the tricks, the way to store the cut loaf face down. The apple slipped in to keep things soft, the ordering of oldest to newest so nothing was forgotten in the back to grow a fuzz of green. The box was a small system of thrift and care, quietly managed, entirely taken for granted. We mostly do without it now, the bread left in its plastic bag on the counter, or shoved in a cupboard, sliced and sealed and lasting far longer than any loaf of that older time. The tin box gone the way of so many small specific things, kept if at all as a bit of decoration rather than a working part of the kitchen. And little is truly lost perhaps in the passing of a bread box. But something small drifted off with it all the same, some sense of bread as a thing that mattered enough to have its own little house, its own daily ritual, its own warm greeting when you rolled the lid back on a quiet afternoon. So roll it back once more and lean in close, into that warm yeasted breath rising up to meet you. Reach in for the soft torn end of a loaf in the hush of the afternoon, one ear cocked for footsteps. It is such a small thing, this tin box in the corner of the counter, a rooster painted on its front, a sigh in its rolling lid. It is also, somehow, the smell of the whole kitchen, of your mother near the stove, of coming in from the cold to a house where there was always bread waiting in the wall of tin. Beside the stove, listen for it, that steady, gurgling rhythm. The percolator does not brew coffee quickly or quietly. It bubbles and perks for long minutes, sending up that unmistakable aroma that drifts into every room and gently wakes the house. There is a little glass knob on top where you can watch the coffee darken with each surge. Nobody is in a hurry. The morning has room in it for a pot of coffee to take its time, and the sound of that bubbling is the sound of the day gathering itself together. The percolator is a handsome thing, aluminum or gleaming chrome, tall and rounded with a black handle and that curious little glass dome set in the lid. Inside is a whole small apparatus, a basket of coffee grounds suspended on a hollow stem, and when the water below begins to boil, it climbs that stem and spouts up into the dome and rains back down through the grounds, over and over, each pass drawing the coffee darker and stronger and more fragrant. It is a machine you can understand at a glance, its workings on display in that little window, and there is a homely honesty in that, nothing hidden. The whole miracle of coffee happening right there where you can watch it. The sound of it is the true alarm clock of the house. Long before anyone speaks, there is that first tentative bloop from the kitchen, then another, then the settling into a steady rhythmic perk, perk, perk that carries up the stairs and into the bedrooms and tells the sleeping house that morning has come and someone is already up and the day is safely underway. You wake to it half dreaming, that familiar bubbling, and know without opening your eyes that the kitchen is warm and the coffee is coming and your mother or your father is already down there, and all is as it should be in the world. And the smell. The smell arrives close behind the sound, curling through the house, that rich, dark, roasted aroma that no other thing produces, seeping under doors and up staircases, gently insistent, impossible to sleep through, and impossible not to love. It is the smell of the day beginning, of the kitchen coming to life, of your parents at the table in the early quiet before the house fills with noise and hurry. Even a child too young for a cup of it learns to love that smell, because of everything it promises, warmth and morning and the grown-ups near and breakfast on its way. There is no rushing it, and no one tries. The percolator takes its long, slow minutes, and those minutes are simply part of the morning, time enough to lay the table, to fetch the paper from the step, to stand at the window and see what kind of day it is going to be. You watch the little glass knob, the coffee showing pale and weak at first and darkening surge by surge, and you learn to read it, to know by its colour when the pot is ready. The waiting is not wasted time. It is the morning taking its proper shape, unhurried, in an hour that still has room to spare. There is craft to it too, and opinions strongly held. How much coffee to the basket, how long to let it perk, the fine line past which the coffee turns bitter and stewed. Your father may take his percolator very seriously indeed, timing it, guarding it, declaring that anyone who lets it go too long has ruined a perfectly good pot. And there is the ritual of the grounds after, knocked out of the basket, sometimes saved for the garden, and the pot rinsed and set ready for tomorrow, because tomorrow there will be coffee again, and the morning after that, the percolator faithful as the sunrise. The percolator presides over more than mornings. It comes out when company calls, set to perking while the cups and saucers are arranged, so that the smell of fresh coffee greets a guest at the door as surely as a welcome. It bubbles through long kitchen table conversations, refilled and set back to perk, the afternoon dissolving into talk over cup after cup. It is the sound and smell of hospitality itself, of neighbours sitting a while, of the kitchen as the true, warm centre of the house. We have traded it for machines that brew in a silent minute, or for pods that vanish the ritual altogether. Coffee on demand with no bubbling and no watching and no wait. And the speed is welcome on a rushed morning, surely. The convenience real, the coffee arguably better made. But something warm boiled away with the percolator. some sense of the morning as an hour worth taking slowly, announced by a familiar sound and a familiar smell, a pot of coffee, given all the time it needed to become itself. So listen for it once more in the early quiet, that first hesitant bloop, and then the steady perk. Perk, perk, rising up through a sleeping house, the smell curling up the stairs behind it. Watch the coffee darken in the little glass dome, pale to amber to rich brown. Nobody is in a hurry. The day has room in it yet, room for the coffee to take its time and the house to wake gently. And that unhurried bubbling is the kind of sound that is harder to find now. The sound of a morning that still knew how to begin slowly. Down the hall to the bedrooms now, to the beds dressed in thick, soft chenille. Run your hand across it and feel the raised rows of little tufts arranged in patterns, a flower, a fan, a swirl. In the afternoon you might lie back on it and wake up with its pattern pressed faintly into your cheek. It is heavy and warm and slightly scratchy in the best way, and every bed in the house wears one. When they are washed and hung out, they take half a day to dry. To you, this is simply what a bed is supposed to feel like. The chenille is a marvel of texture, a field of soft raised tufts standing up in neat rows against a woven ground, dense and plush under the hand. You can read the pattern with your fingers in the dark, tracing the raised lines of a great blooming flower, a peacock's fan, a starburst, a scrolling border, following the design across the whole broad surface of the bed. The colours are soft and homey, a faded rose, a pale gold, a chenille white gone cream with washing, a blue like a washed-out summer sky. And each spread is a small quiet work of craft. The tufts arranged in their patterns and chosen and loved by the family beneath them. It is a heavy thing, chenille, weightier than it looks, and there is a particular comfort in that weight on a cool night. The spread pressing gently down over the blankets, holding the warmth in, anchoring you to the bed. You feel held under it, tucked and settled, and the slight roughness of the tufts against a bare arm is not unpleasant but reassuring. A texture your skin knows as well as it knows anything. The exact feel of your own bed in your own room and no other place in the world. Afternoons find a child sprawled across it, meaning to rest only a moment, drifting off in the warm, slanting light with the tufts pressing their pattern into a soft cheek. You wake with the flower or the fan printed faintly on your skin, a temporary tattoo of your own bedspread, and you carry it about for an hour, fading slowly until it smooths away and is gone. The spread holds the shapes of things, the long crease of where you lay, the round dent of a book set down, the valley left by the cat. And each morning your mother makes the bed and squares the chenille neatly, pulling it taut and even so it hangs to the floor on every side, and the day's small history of the bed is erased and begun again. Washing it is an event, because the chenille drinks water and grows enormously heavy when wet, and it takes an age on the line, hung out in the sun to dry through slowly, half a day at least on a good breeze, and longer if the air is damp. Your mother wrestles it, sodden and dripping, out to the yard and up onto the line, and it hangs there heavy as a ship's sail, sagging the rope, drying at its own patient pace. Until it is dry, the bed wears a lesser blanket and does not feel entirely itself, and there is a small quiet gladness when the spread comes back in, sun-warmed and fluffed and smelling of the outdoors, and is settled once more over the bed where it belongs. The chenille marks the seasons of a childhood in a way you only understand much later. The particular pattern on your bed, the particular colour, becomes so woven into the feeling of home that decades on, the mere sight of that faded rose or that peacock fan in some antique shop window can stop you cold on the sidewalk, flooded all at once with the whole feeling of being small, of that room, of the afternoon light, of your mother's step in the hall. The spread outlasts so much. It is passed down, worn thin, mended, handed to a younger sibling, and it carries the whole family's sleep in its tufts. We sleep under lighter things now, under duvets and comforters and coverlets that wash and dry in an hour and ask nothing much of anyone, and there is ease in that, and no shortage of comfort, and no half-day wrestling a sodden spread onto a sagging line. But the chenille had a character that our lighter bedding lacks, a weight and a texture and a homeliness, a way of pressing its pattern into your cheek and its warmth into your bones, of being so unmistakably, particularly yours. It is the kind of specific comfort that is harder to find now, a bed that felt like exactly your bed, dressed in thick tufted chenille the colour of an afternoon. So lie back on it once more in the warm slanting light. Feel the raised rose soft and scratchy under your open hand, the heavy plush weight settling over you like a held breath. Every bed in the house wore one, and every one of them felt like home, and every one left its gentle pattern on a sleeping cheek. It is such a simple thing, a tufted bedspread the colour of faded roses, and yet it is woven right through the memory of being small and safe and warm, drifting off in the golden afternoon with the flower pressing softly into your cheek, into the bathroom behind the mirror, to the little cabinet crowded with small glass bottles and tins. Here is the iodine that stings, the mercurochrome that stains you a cheerful red, the cold cream, the castor oil no child ever wanted. Half of these remedies would raise an eyebrow today, but here they are lined up like trusted old friends, each with its own strong smell and its own promise. When you're sick or scraped, this is where healing comes from, one dab and one grimace at a time. The cabinet is small and shallow, set into the wall behind the mirror, and opening it is like opening a little museum of the family's ailments and remedies. The shelves are crowded with brown glass bottles and squat tins and boxes gone soft at the corners, the labels peeling, the contents mysterious and various, some of them older than you are. There is a smell that greets you when the mirror swings open, a compound of camphor and alcohol and menthol and old cork, sharp and medicinal. The smell of being cared for and the smell of dreading the cure both at once, so that even the scent of the place makes a child a little wary. The mercurochrome is the friendly one, that vivid red antiseptic painted onto every childhood scrape with a little glass wand, staining the skin a cheerful crimson that lasted for days and marked you plainly as a survivor of some backyard mishap. You almost wanted to be hurt, a little, for the badge of it. The iodine is its fearsome cousin, dark and stinging, drawing a sharp cry the instant it touched broken skin, and you learned to brace for it, to grit your teeth while your mother blew on the cut to ease the burn, murmuring that it only stung because it was working, that a good sting meant a clean wound. Between the two of them, every skinned knee and elbow of childhood was tended. Then there are the graver remedies, the ones spoken of with a certain dread. The castor oil, thick and vile, administered by mothers with an unshakable faith in its powers, and swallowed by children with unshakable revulsion, chased by orange juice or anything at hand to kill the taste. The cod liver oil doled out by the spoonful through the winter, the milk of magnesia, chalky and awful, the mustard plaster mixed up hot and spread on the chest for a deep cough, the paregoric, the tonics and the syrups and the salves whose labels made bold promises no one thought to question. These were the front line against every illness, and they were dosed out with love and with certainty in equal measure. The cabinet held the softer things too, the cold cream your mother smoothed on at night, the witch hazel, the talcum powder that puffed up in a sweet cloud, the little tin of all-purpose salve good for everything from chapped lips to a squeaking hinge. There was a bottle of aspirin and a thermometer in its slim case, and perhaps a straight razor and a styptic pencil and a mug of shaving soap on your father's shelf. The whole apparatus of the household's small medicine lived here in this one shallow cabinet, presided over by your mother, who knew every bottle and its purpose, and dosed the family from it with the calm authority of a country doctor. There was theatre to being sick, and the cabinet was its prop closet. A feverish child was tucked up on the good couch with the plastic still on it, dosed and dabbed and fussed over, the thermometer produced and read at the window, the cool cloth laid on the brow. The remedies came out one by one, each with its own ritual, and whether they cured much or little, the being cared for was its own medicine, the mother's hand on the forehead worth more than anything in any bottle. You learned that to be ill was to be tended, and the sharp medicinal smell of that little cabinet became, strangely, a smell of comfort. We would look askance now at half of what lined those shelves, the mercury and the mercurochrome, the things prescribed and swallowed on faith and folklore, the remedies since found useless or worse, the doses no one measured very carefully. We know more now, and our medicines are tested and measured and child-proofed and safer by far, and that is a plain good thing. No romance to be found in a cure that did more harm than the ailment it chased. But there was a comfort in that crowded little cabinet all the same, a sense that whatever befell you, there was a bottle for it, a dab or a dose, a mother who knew exactly what to reach for. So swing the mirror open once more and breathe in that sharp medicinal air, camphor and alcohol and old cork, and look at the little bottles lined up like old friends, the cheerful red and the stinging dark and the dreaded thick. This was where healing came from, one grimace at a time, dispensed with love, if not always with wisdom. It is the kind of certainty that is harder to find now, a mother reaching without hesitation for the right bottle. Sure, it would set you right, painting your scraper triumphant red, and blowing gently, gently on the sting. Back in the den, that handsome little table in the corner holds a secret. Lift the hinge top and a sewing machine rises up from inside, black and gold and heavy as an anvil. Your mother sits here in the evenings, the treadle rocking beneath her foot or the motor humming low, mending, hemming, making over one dress into another. Store-bought clothes are a luxury, and this machine is how the family stays dressed. When the work is done, it folds neatly away again, and the table is just a table once more. The machine is a beautiful and serious thing, cast iron painted glossy black, ornamented with gold scrollwork and delicate painted flowers, and the maker's name in gilt across the arm, and it weighs a very great deal so that hoisting it up out of its cabinet is a two-handed effort not undertaken lightly. When it's folded down, hinged neatly into the table with the top closed over it, the whole apparatus vanishes and the piece becomes an ordinary side table, a lamp and a doily upon it, unremarkable in the corner. But lift the top and swing the machine up into place with a satisfying clunk, and the corner transforms into a workshop, the whole business of clothing the family made ready in a moment. Your mother is its master, and she sits to it in the evening lamplight with the ease of long practice. If it is a treadle model, her foot rocks the wide iron pedal below in a steady rhythm, driving the belt and the great wheel and the flashing needle, and there is a whole coordination to it. the feet and the hands working together in a motion so ingrained she can carry on a conversation while she sews. The needle flashes up and down, the thread paying out from its spool with a soft whir, and a seam appears as if by magic, where a moment before there were two loose edges, straight and fine and strong, and the fabric feeds through steadily beneath her guiding fingers. The work she does here is endless and mostly invisible, hems let down as children shoot up and let down again the following year. Trousers patched at the knee where a boy has worn clean through, a shirt collar turned inside out and resewn to hide its fraying edge, a dress made over into a smaller dress for a smaller sister, and that one made over again into something else entirely, a doll's frock, a set of aprons. The good fabric of a thing used and reused until nothing whole remained. New clothes from a paper pattern when there was money and occasion, a school dress, a Sunday shirt, a Halloween costume run up overnight. The family is dressed very largely by this machine and the woman who runs it. There is a whole kit that lives with it, a world of small tools and treasures. The pincushion bristling like a small red hedgehog, often with strawberry hanging off it that no child ever understood. The tin of buttons, that endless glittering hoard saved from every worn-out garment, poured out on the floor for a child to sort and play with on a rainy day. The tape measure, the pinking shears that cut a zigzag edge, the tailor's chalk, the seam ripper, the paper patterns folded soft as cloth with use and kept in their printed envelopes. A child learns to be useful here, fetching a spool of the right colour, threading a needle for aging eyes, standing patiently to be measured or pinned into a half-made garment, holding very still while a hem is marked all the way round with pins between pursed lips. And a child learns, too, simply by watching in the lamplight, the quiet competence of it, the way a torn or outgrown thing was not thrown away but studied, unpicked, altered, made to serve again in some new form. It was a lesson in thrift and in ingenuity and in care, taught without a word, night after night, until it settled somewhere deep. To watch your mother turn a worn sheet into pillowcases, a feed sack into a summer dress, was to absorb a whole philosophy about waste and worth that a store could never teach. We buy our clothes ready-made now, cheap and plentiful, and when they tear or no longer fit, we mostly let them go. The skill of the needle grown rare and specialized. The folding sewing table long since sold off at some estate sale, or forgotten in an attic. And there is ease in that, no denying, closets crammed full where once hung a careful and mended few. But something capable was lost when the machine folded away for the last time, some thrift and self-reliance, some sense that a family could clothe and mend and remake itself by its own hands in the evening lamplight, beholden to no one. So lift that hinge top once more and swing the heavy black machine up into the light, gold flowers gleaming on its glossy iron, and sit where your mother sat, foot resting on the treadle, a seam taking shape beneath her sure and unhurried hands. Store-bought was a luxury, and this was how the family stayed dressed, evening after evening, a torn thing made whole and an outgrown thing made new. It is the kind of quiet mastery that is harder to find now, a woman and a machine, and a corner of the den, keeping a whole family clothed one steady humming seam at a time. Back to the stove for something that hisses and rattles and commands a certain wary respect. The pressure cooker sits atop the burner, its little weighted valve jiggling and steaming, cooking a pot roast or a batch of beans in a fraction of the usual time. Everyone in the house knows the stories of the one that let go, the ceiling that wore its supper for a week. So you give it space, you watch it carefully, and you feel a small thrill of relief when the pressure hisses safely down. It is a marvel. It is also just a little bit a dragon on the stove. The thing itself is a heavy pot of thick aluminum, its lid clamped down tight and sealed with a rubber gasket, and set into the top of that lid is the little weighted piece that does all the talking. As the pressure builds inside, that weight begins to rock, gently at first, then faster, then into a steady, furious jiggle, hissing out a thin jet of steam with each rock, keeping up a chatter that fills the whole kitchen. Your mother listens to it the way a train engineer listens to an engine, adjusting the flame beneath to keep that rocking steady. Not too fierce, not too faint, reading the pot by its sound alone. There is real science in why it works, though no one at the table stops to think of it. Sealed tight, the pot lets the pressure climb, and under that pressure the water inside grows hotter than it ever could in an open kettle. And so a tough cut of meat that would need hours of slow, simmering surrenders in 40 minutes, and dried beans give up their stubbornness by supper time instead of the next day. It is a genuine marvel of the modern kitchen, a way to cheat the clock, and on a busy afternoon it is the difference between a proper hot supper and going without. But the respect it commands is earned, and everyone knows why. The stories are legion, told and retold in every kitchen. The pressure cooker that was opened too soon or built up too high, the lid that blew, the beans that ended up on the ceiling and stayed there for a week no matter how hard anyone scrubbed. Somebody's aunt, somebody's neighbour, somebody's own mother in her younger careless days. The stories are half warning and half comedy, and they keep a healthy fear alive so that no one ever tries to force that lid before the pressure has come all the way down. That coming down is its own small drama at the end. When the cooking time is up, your mother slides the pot off the heat, and now everyone waits. You do not touch it. You do not rush it. You wait for the hiss to slow and settle, or she carries it to the sink and runs cool water over the lid to bring the pressure down faster, the pot spitting and sputtering under the tap, and only when the little weight sits still and silent, when a nudge of it releases no more steam, only then does she work the lid loose and lift it away, turned from her face, and a great fragrant cloud billows up to the ceiling, and supper is revealed, tender and done. A child is kept well back from all of this. The pressure cooker is firmly in the category of things that are not toys, not to be touched, to be respected from a distance the way you respect the hot stove or the ringer down in the basement. You watch from the doorway as the weight jiggles and the steam jets, half fascinated and half wary, and you learn its mood second-hand, learn to read your mother's face as she tends it, learn that some things in a house are powerful and useful, and genuinely a little dangerous all at once, and that the answer to such things is not fear exactly, but care. For all its drama, it is beloved, because it feeds the family well and quickly. A tough, cheap cut becomes fork tender and rich. A pot of beans, a stew, a steamed pudding, a batch of tomatoes or green beans put up for the winter, all of it made possible by that hissing dragon on the burner. On canning days, the pressure cooker runs for hours, and the whole kitchen turns hot and steamy and purposeful. Jars lined up gleaming, the pot chattering away, the pantry shelves slowly filling with the summer's bounty sealed against the cold months. It is a workhorse, a marvel, and the loud beating heart of many a busy afternoon. We mostly set them aside for a long while, wary of the old stories, and cooked our suppers slower or bought them ready-made, until the modern versions came along, sealed and censored and safe, chattering no more, doing their work behind locked lids that'll not open until it is safe to open them. And that is progress, surely, the danger engineered clean away, the sealing forever spared. But the old pot had a presence the quiet new ones lack, a voice, a temperament, a sense of something powerful being carefully mastered on the stovetop by a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. So listen for it once more, that furious jiggling rock and the thin jet of steam, filling the kitchen with sound and the promise of supper. Give it its space and its respect, and wait for the hiss to settle before you dare come near. It was a marvel, and it was a dragon both, and your mother tamed it every week without a second thought, and the kind of confident, careful command she had over that dangerous, wonderful pot is harder to find now, gone quiet behind a safety latch, hissing softly into memory. Step out back once more, to the odd mound of earth or the reinforced corner of the basement stocked with canned goods and jugs of water. This is the fallout shelter, and building one is a thing sensible families are doing now. The children practice ducking under school desks, and here at home there is a room set aside for a danger too large to fully imagine. It sits quietly beneath the ordinary rhythms of the household, this small underground promise that you will be all right. It is a strange thing to live above, and stranger still that it feels almost normal. Some are elaborate, dug deep into the backyard with a hatch and a ladder and concrete walls, a whole small room under the grass where the vegetable garden used to be. Others are humbler, just a corner of the basement walled off and shored up, shelves bolted to the studs, the family's hedge against the unthinkable. The magazines run plans for them, and the government prints pamphlets, and a man might spend his weekends down there with a trowel and a load of cinder block, building against a future no one can quite picture, but everyone has been told to prepare for. The stocking of it is a careful business, and oddly domestic for all its grim purpose. Cans of food line the shelves, meats and vegetables and condensed milk, enough to last a family 2 weeks shut away from the world. Jugs of water stand in rows. There's a first aid kit, a battery radio, a flashlight and spare batteries, blankets, a deck of cards perhaps, a few books to pass the long-imagined hours. Your mother rotates the cans so nothing spoils. The way she manages any pantry, and there is something almost tender in the care she takes over provisions for a catastrophe. She prays will never come. The children absorb it all as simply part of how the world is. At school there are the drills, the teacher's brisk command, the scramble beneath the desks, small bodies curled with hands laced over the backs of necks, holding still in the dusty under-desk dark until the all clear. No one explains it very fully. You know only that there is a danger out there, vast and vague, and that ducking down is what you do about it, and you file back to your arithmetic afterward as though nothing at all unusual has happened. It is woven into childhood so seamlessly that it hardly frightens you most days. At home the shelter sits quietly beneath everything, a strange presence in an ordinary life. You play in the yard above where the concrete room waits underground. You fetch a can of peaches from its shelves when the kitchen runs short, borrowing from the doomsday store for an ordinary Tuesday supper. The shelter becomes, against all reason, just another part of the house, a cool, dim room the children are half forbidden and half fascinated by, a place to hide during games, a den, a secret. The end of the world folded neatly into the geography of home, and yet on certain nights the strangeness of it presses through. A tense report on the radio, the grown-ups' voices dropping low, a father standing longer than usual at the shelter's door checking the stores. You catch, now and then, the edge of the fear the adults mostly keep hidden. The understanding that the shelter is not a game, that it is there because clever and serious people believe it might truly be needed. And you lie in your chenille-covered bed above it all and feel, dimly, the weight of living in a time that had built a room in the ground for the worst thing anyone could imagine. Most of these shelters were never used, thank God, and stand empty now or filled with the ordinary clutter of storage, the cans long since eaten or thrown out. The water poured away, the whole grim apparatus quietly repurposed for garden tools and holiday decorations. The drill stopped, the pamphlets yellowed in drawers. The great vague danger receded, or at least changed its shape, and a generation that had curled under its school desks grew up and mostly set the memory aside. And that easing is a mercy, plainly, the lifting of a shadow no child should have to live beneath. But it is worth remembering all the same that a whole generation did live beneath it, and lived otherwise ordinary lives, played and squabbled and did their homework above a room built for the end of everything. There is something both sorrowful and quietly brave in that, in the way a family stocked its shelves against the unthinkable, and then went upstairs to eat supper and listen to the radio, and put the children to bed as though the world were a safe and permanent place. So stand a moment at the top of those shelter stairs, looking down into the cool, dim room with its rows of cans and jugs, its blankets folded, its flashlight waiting. It was a strange thing to live above, and stranger still how normal it came to feel. It is the kind of quiet dread that is hard to imagine now, tucked beneath the mown grass in the ordinary days, a small underground promise, mostly unspoken, that whatever came, the family meant to be all right. Follow the cellar stairs down once more to a dark corner walled off near a small window at ground level. This is the coal bin, and through a chute in that window the coal man pours a rumbling black avalanche that thunders down and settles into a heap. All winter someone shovels it into the furnace to keep the house warm, and a fine dark dust settles on everything nearby. The whole basement carries that mineral, smoky smell. Cleaner fuels are coming, and this room will one day fall silent, but for now warmth is something you shovel by hand. The delivery is an event, and a child will run to watch it. The coal man backs his truck up to the house, and there is a great clanking and manoeuvring as he fits his metal chute into the little basement window, and then he tips his load, and the coal comes roaring down in a black torrent, tumbling and clattering into the bin below with a sound like thunder rolling through the cellar. It raises a cloud of dark dust that hangs in the air and coats the coal man himself until only the whites of his eyes show clean, and he is paid and gone, and the bin is full again for another few weeks of cold. The furnace it feeds is a great iron beast in the middle of the basement, all pipes and doors, and keeping it going is a real and constant labour through the winter months. Someone, usually your father, goes down morning and evening to tend it, opening the iron door on a bed of glowing coals, shovelling in fresh coal from the bin, adjusting the draughts, banking it down at night so it will hold its fire until dawn. It is hot, dirty, physical work, and it never stops for the whole long season, because the moment the fire goes out, the house begins to chill, and the pipes could freeze, and the whole family would wake shivering. And then there are the ashes, the other half of the bargain. Coal does not burn clean away, and the clinkers and ash must be raked out and hauled up and carried off, a gritty, dusty chore that leaves its mark on hands and clothes. The ash bucket by the furnace, the ash pile out back, the fine grey grit that finds its way onto everything. Between the coal going in and the ashes coming out, the tending of the furnace is a whole system of labour that runs quietly beneath the warmth of the house, invisible upstairs where the heat simply rises through the grates. The dust is the price of all of it, and the dust is everywhere. Coal dust is fine and black and persistent, and it settles on the basement shelves, on the jars of preserves, on the laundry if it is hung too near, on the very walls. Your mother wages a constant quiet war against it, and the coal side corner of the cellar is understood to be dirty ground, a place you do not go in your good clothes. The whole lower part of the house carries that particular smell, dark and mineral and faintly sulphurous, the smell of the fuel and the fire, the smell of being warm in winter. A child learns the coal bin as a place of both fascination and prohibition. The black heap is a mountain to a small imagination, glittering faintly where the coal breaks fresh, and there is a strong temptation to climb it or dig in it, or fill your pockets with the interesting shining lumps. All of it strictly forbidden, all of it certain to earn a scolding and a scrubbing. You learn the geography of the fire too, the glow behind the iron door, the roar of the draught, the warning never to open that door yourself, and you carry a healthy respect for the beast that keeps the house alive through January. Cleaner fuels came, as everyone said they would. The oil burner, and then the gas furnace, quiet and automatic, needing no shoveling, making no dust, asking nothing of anyone but a thermostat turned with a fingertip. And the coal bin fell silent, swept out at last, walled up or given over to storage, the great iron furnace hauled away for scrap, and nobody who ever shovelled coal at 6 on a January morning would call it anything but a blessing, the labour lifted clean away, the dust gone, the warmth made effortless and clean. But there was a knowledge in it too that we have mostly lost, a closeness to the warmth that kept you alive. You knew exactly where your heat came from, because you shovelled it and hauled its ashes and ran to watch it thunder down the chute. It was not an abstraction, not a number on a bill, but a black heap in the corner, and a fire behind an iron door, and a father's labour morning and night. There was reality to being warm, a weight and a cost and a smell to it, that the turn of a modern thermostat can never quite convey. So stand once more at the mouth of that dark-walled corner, before the glittering black heap, and breathe in that mineral, smoky smell that soaked into the whole cellar. Warmth, here, is something you shovel by hand, morning and night, all the long winter through. It is the kind of hard, honest closeness to the fire that is nearly gone now. Warmth with a face and a weight and a price, waiting in a heap in the corner for someone to carry it, lump by lump, to the beating iron heart of the house. And so we come to the end of our slow walk through the house, room by room, object by object, and it is time to let it all settle. Think of everything we found here. The milk waiting cold in the wall before dawn, the percolator bubbling the morning awake, the single warm grate you race to on a January floor, the wringer and the line and the whole hard week of keeping a family clean and clothed and fed, the one glowing screen the family gathered before, and the doilies laid just so over the arms of the good chair. None of it was remarkable to the people who lived among it. It was simply Tuesday. It was simply home. But look at what those ordinary days were made of when you slow down enough to see them. Care, mostly. A mother rotating cans she prayed she would never need. A father shovelling coal into the dark before the house woke cold. Neighbours keeping the same small appointments across the same low fences, close enough to call each other by name. They did not think of themselves as living in a golden age. They were just living, tending their homes thread by thread, holding their lives together with hairspray and thrift and quiet, steady love. Maybe that is the thing to carry forward. Not the coal or the ringer or the smoke, but the tending, the noticing, the willingness to give one thing your whole attention, the way they gave a telephone call a place to sit down. So tonight, as you pull the blanket up and find the cool side of the pillow, let the house go quiet around you. The coffee is off, the line is empty, the grate has gone cool, and you are here, safe and warm, allowed to rest,